And we are live. Thanks everybody for joining in on this sponsorship morning coffee. It's been a while since we've had an episode. I apologize to that, but I'm really excited to get this thing kicked back off with Tony Perez, Director of Corporate Partnerships for the Miami Heat. Tony, thanks so much for jumping on this morning. I know it's mid-season. I know it's a work day for you all. You all actually have a game tonight, so really appreciate the time and you jumping on.
Yeah, no problem. And the hardest part was waiting till now to have we have cafecito in Miami, not coffee, cafecito. It's our Cuban version of coffee. So I just have to wait a little bit longer to have that coffee today.
Well, hopefully it's worth the wait. I've been meaning to make it down to Miami and get some cafecito. So I gotta make it down there. But really excited to chat with you, especially, today. Really diving in and jumping in on what you all just went through in the NBA. And we have some clients in the NBA and kind of went through it with them. But, I guess my first question is NBA season is rocking and rolling. The Heat got off to a great start on the court. And then, it seems like in an afternoon or an evening, games were shut down. First question for you, what were the most important things that you as a department and you had to kind of convey to your sponsors as, you were getting the news of, hey, we don't know when games are going to be coming back this season?
Yeah, and it feels like a long time ago, but we all remember right where we were when that moment happened where the OKC game got stopped. And that's when it became real for us. And I think that's when other people started to feel that it was real as well. And around mid-March, at that point, our priority was make sure that all of our fans, our partners, and our players were safe. And for the next couple months, what we were doing kind of took a back seat. And in reality, there's no playbook for this. So we didn't have a playbook to open and say, okay, here's step 1, 2, and 3. So what we really wanted to tell our partners and the message we wanted to get across is that during this time, we just want to be empathetic and flexible and understand that their business is going through a lot of changes as well. Out of our 100 partners, each one of them was affected in some capacity. Nobody was safe when it came to this or bulletproof to this pandemic. So we wanted to be flexible. We wanted to be empathetic. And I would say around May is when we really started having these business conversations. And we're in a business relationship with these partners, but that word relationship is something that's very important to us. And we kind of use that as our North Star when it comes to how can we nurture these relationships and make sure that what we do in the short term benefits us in the long term. So with those 100 partners, we probably had 100 conversations that went differently. And for each one, we just wanted to understand what their business was going through and how we can help them through our different channels. And if we couldn't do that in the short term, how can we do that in the long term? So it was all about the relationship. We just wanted to make sure that we were providing value however we could and just being flexible because they were dealing with this for the first time as well. And we couldn't be insensitive to that. And in that situation, we had gone through about 75% of our season. So in some cases, it was, hey, do you want to talk about how we can make up that 25% of value that we still owe you? Or do you want to talk about moving that value onto next year? So that's kind of how those conversations went. But we led with empathy and flexibility. Those were those two kind of main things that we wanted to drive home. We're here with you guys. We're not going to make this difficult for you. Let's just talk through this and make this work in a way that makes sense for both of us.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on there. There was no playbook for this, right? I mean, there was kind of never really a long-term, hey, we're shutting everything down. And honestly, I can remember at the time there was like, we don't know when we're coming back. For you, obviously, in the NBA, it was an adjustment from there to, hey, we're getting a bubble. Hey, we're getting some games back. We're getting some, content back. Kind of what was that, just adjusting those assets for, again, a fanless sort of experience? I mean, obviously we had fans tuning in, through the NBA courtside kind of piece, but for you and your local partners, what was the experience like just shifting those assets to a brand new experience that, to be honest, nobody knew how it was going to turn out and how it was going to, play with fans?
Right. No, that's a great question. And at that point, I would say around mid-May, our fans were jonesing for basketball. And when The Last Dance came out, everybody saw that. And the amount of attention that drew, it showed that we're still living in an attention economy, and sports is at the pinnacle of that. If you look at all the TV ratings, the top 100 TV ratings, how many of those are in sports? So we still checked that box. And when it came to the bubble, we had opportunities to activate there. Most of it was branding, and that's not the only thing that we do, but it's one of the best things that we do. So we had basically three boxes that we can check once basketball got started again. We had the branding within the bubble with all of the signage that we offered, and we had our digital activations that we can still do. And the digital space is something that we're very bullish on. It's something that we are we have a very large team that focuses on that, and we've gone very sophisticated with how we do our digital marketing. So a lot of our partners gravitated towards that lane. And then lastly, we've always been very community focused. It's something that we take a lot of pride in nurturing our community and being there for them when they need it, without asking for the publicity that comes with it. It's just we do it because it's the right thing to do. So our CSR programs were also something that our partners were looking to do to support and help our community. And we had a lot of partners that typically didn't activate in that space that were now coming to us and saying, "Hey, how can we help?" So those were the three lanes that we focused on, and it's not what was in the contract, but it was what we had to offer at that point, and that comes with the flexibility that we talked about before. We were kind of putting the partners in the right spots that they wanted to be in, and to get to that point, we kind of had to reverse engineer the relationship and see why they came to partner with us in the first place, and then find the right lanes within those three verticals for them to participate in.
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, that flexibility, that innovation is obviously a key with your partners, just to even let them know, hey, we're going to make some changes. We're going to make sure we have your best interest in heart. Obviously the Heat did great on the court, made it to the finals. Unfortunately, didn't win. As a lifelong Warriors fan and born and bred to dislike the Lakers a little bit, I was hoping for a Heat win. But from a sponsorship side, I mean, obviously, we've heard and seen about how the finals, can really build momentum in your partnership department with your partners. Did that finals appearance kind of change anything for your partners, whether it's excitement, whether it's new activations or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's whenever you have that deep finals run, it creates national relevance. So we're everyone in South Florida knows the impact that the Heat have in South Florida. But when I'm recalling people who have a headquarters in New York, Boston, Dallas, wherever it may be, um, after they've seen us do a late season playoff run, it's a little bit, you get a phone call returned a little bit quicker, and they just want to kind of see what those interests are. And what we were most proud of was that I think the Heat culture got to be put on the national stage. And when we talk about Heat culture from a basketball perspective, I have this towel from when I was a fan, probably in the late '90s, and it's kind of Pat Riley's his mantra. And it's the hardest working, best conditioned, most professional, unselfish, nastiest, toughest team in the NBA. And a lot of people have heard us talking about the Heat culture. And if you're on Twitter, you see Heat Twitter is always mentioning Heat culture. And I think you got to see that it wasn't hyperbole, that it was real, that we were the best conditioned team. And when all the experts were picking the Bucks in 5, then the Celtics in 5, then the Lakers in 4, that wasn't going to fly with us. And for us to be able to be on the national stage in that regard, it was fun. The main goal was still a championship, but it was nice to be able to be on that national stage, and it does help from a business perspective as well.
Yeah, and you've talked a lot about just the culture, and again, I've never visited Miami, but the big thing that always pops up when people talk about it is just the local culture, right? Whether it's sports, whether it's again the city, and whether that's nightlife. Obviously, love your Miami Vice kind of jerseys that really exemplify kind of the city. For you, as unique of a culture as that is, how do you all kind of build that into your sponsorship packages, whether again it's the sort of team's culture or it's the city's culture, whether that's building packages locally or whether that's having a national package that really gets that out there?
Yeah, so for the most part, if an advertiser is coming to us, it's because they want to have some impact with the Hispanic community. If you look at South Florida as a whole, we're over 65% Hispanic, so it comes to the territory of advertising with us, marketing with us. So our partnerships do reflect that. It goes traditionally. You would see it with our partners who are focused and who want more market share in the Hispanic demographic. So like with our QSR chicken partner, Pollo Tropical, their local brand down here, they own the Dos Minutos call out that we have in the game because it's such an iconic part of our game. When they say 2 minutes, we're the only team that says Dos Minutos along with it. We have Cafe Bustelo, who has a cafecito time with our Spanish broadcaster and the players where they make Cuban coffee. Obviously, Goya activates with some of our players as well. But you'll see some of our other brands that are more national advertisers, they'll dip their toes in the water as well, and they'll lean into it because it's who we are, and we don't shy away from that. Um, I think we also have done a good job of using Miami as a backdrop. If you look at any of our Vice intro videos, it's all about Miami because that jersey represents Miami. So it's definitely part of what we do, and it's going to continue being part of what we do.
Yeah, and kind of follow up to that, I'm always intrigued on like not necessarily price but value to a sponsor, right? I mean, it's almost like this intangible thing that you want to be a part of, but at some point that needs to go into kind of the value of the package. I mean, do you all have a way that, again, it's not really pricing it, but do you all have a way of, say, measuring the value of that ability to be so ingrained into the culture of the city?
Yeah, absolutely. We've built enough equity in the community that we and not only that, but when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's part of who our front office is. So our front office is this mirrors the same diverse community that we have in our city. So they know how to speak to our fans, and they know um, how to properly place our product in front of our fans. So we just released a 12 pack with our craft brewery, and the packaging represents Miami, and we there's a premium for that when we design it with them, and they understand them. That's why they come to us. So there's definitely some. We've built up enough equity. I would say again that it's reflected in why people want to come to us, and they'll pay the premium that comes with it because of the
Yeah.
equity we've built.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Kind of moving into this season, I know it just seems like it started yesterday. Sometimes it seems like it started a lifetime ago. For you, with no fans, obviously you have, sponsors, coming back for another season. It's a whole new kind of experience. What's kind of been the biggest things for your partners to keep them on board, and obviously from you all making sure you're still delivering the value when your stadium is empty, and obviously that feeling, that experience, that awareness maybe in stadium is not there.
Yeah, so when you're talking about what's happening in the stadium, it's obviously a major part of what we do. It's the energy, it's the ticket revenue, it's everything that happens in the building. But if you're a partner and you're looking to activate in front of our fans, it's only a small percentage of our fans. So you only have about 1% of our entire fan base in South Florida in the building at one time. So there's still, I'm not discounting how important it is to activate in front of them, but there's still a good bite at the apple outside of just our four walls of the arena. So we have the digital activations, and we have, thankfully, the NBA has been very flexible and given us this new signage, the tarps, the digital signage on the court, things like that. We have new baseline signage, LEDs. So stuff like that's been very helpful, and you'll see partners are activating there because they find value in it. So we still have those activations, and then again, I can't harp on how important our digital team has been in helping us activate digitally and getting our partners to own something in the mind of the consumer in a digital space. We're working on the gamification of the game to get fans in the habit of going on our app and taking quizzes and supporting our partners in that capacity as well. So this is all part of our new ecosystem that I think is going to be great in the long term, because it's going to continue being part of what we do as a team, to incorporate our fans and our brands into this conversation together.
Yeah, and kind of to go off of that, obviously we have to, as teams, we have to rely a little bit more heavily on our digital activations, whether you were in digital activation pre-pandemic or not. How do you see that dynamic moving forward once we do get fans back into the stadium? Let's call it things back to normal. I mean, we've built so many digital assets. How do you see that transitioning, into the next 5 years, where now we have some digital assets, we obviously get our in-game assets back. I guess, how do we make sure that there's not asset overload for sponsors, and how do you see those digital assets kind of transitioning, once we do get fans back?
Yeah, I think the digital space, it's when we have a following that allows us to act like a media publisher. So when we create this branded and sponsored content, we're finding ways to organically and authentically integrate our partners into our content, and we do this by bringing our digital team along the process the entire way, so they know exactly what each partner's goals are, and then we have the right places where we can place them to achieve those goals. So I can't. I think that's just it's where the future of sponsorship is going, because it's the most effective way to reach people at scale, in a way that still is organic and it's not forced. So as long as it's authentic, I think it's going to work for our partners in the long term and right now in the short term.
Yeah, and I put a question out there on Twitter that you responded to, just what are those 2021 trends? And I think you put it perfectly of, having digital assets built for the sponsor, as opposed to having, just having a digital asset and saying, hey, sponsor, jump on this, to where it actually is going to fit their goals. And you're not just, slapping a logo on the tweet. So I think you're totally right there, and I'm a digital guy. I'm really, really bullish on where sponsorship is shifting. I mean, on our podcast with Rich, the Inches, sometimes we go back and forth of, me discounting signage a little bit, more so than he does, and really the digital assets. So, this next question kind of puts you a little bit on the hot seat, but I think, your organization is really well suited to, answer it, looking at how brands are spending, and brands are spending more and more on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram ads, Twitter ads, things like that. How do you deal with, a sponsor coming in and saying, hey, look, we're spending more on digital. We're going to really double down, let's say, on our Facebook ad, campaign, because it's doing so well, and showing so much return. And we're going to, pull back a little bit from you all. And we've seen this happen, with sponsors today. How do you as a team kind of respond to, a brand kind of just saying, hey, we're going to double down on running our own ads, and kind of pull away because, sports sponsorship has totally shifted away from that, in-venue experience?
Yeah, that's fair, and that comes with the territory of, if we're gonna talk as if we're a media publisher, then we have to act like it. And it comes to the territory, and I would tell them, like, for example, when you scroll through Instagram, what's an ad or a category that's constantly bombarding you with ads?
For me, it's right now it's backpacks, because I'm looking for a new backpack. So I've been visiting some of those websites, and obviously they're pixeling me and resending me ads.
Yeah. So for me, it's funny. For me, it's I don't know why it's skincare routines, and then I know why it's this one. It's golf lessons and golf things to teach, to kind of set your swing, because I'm a terrible golfer, and I guess Instagram knows that. So the way I explain it to our prospects or our partners is, if you're at a party and someone comes up to you and taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, let me tell you about my skincare routine," it's kind of weird. So when you're scrolling through Instagram and someone says, "Hey, let me tell you about your skincare routine," it's kind of the same thing. But if someone at the party comes and it's your friend and he says, "Hey, you should meet my buddy who he actually has this pretty cool skincare routine. You should check it out. You should listen to what he's saying," it might be a little bit more effective. So that's kind of the same thing that we're doing. When you come, you partner with us, and we have content that talks about a player's routine on the road. It doesn't have to be necessarily a skincare routine, but you get that routine kind of theme in front of the fan, and then later on you can retarget them with a skincare routine type of ad. It's going to resonate a little bit better. So I think that's why we are so effective when it comes to our digital partnerships, because it's just not as intrusive as you getting a blind. It's like getting a cold call. It's not as effective as a warm intro.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I've referred to teams as influencers, and in all honesty, that's what influencers do. Is when they're promoting a product, they're almost introducing that product kind of to their fan base. I mean, how much, and this just comes from being in some sponsorship meetings with clients. I mean, for a team that's not really doing digital, how much do you on the sponsorship department side have to be like in that world? And I mean, cost per click, retargeting, pixels. I mean, how much education do you kind of have to have on that or do you think should sponsorship people kind of have on that as this world of advertising shifts over to digital?
Yeah, I think you have to be comfortable with the language, and you have to know what they're talking about when the partner brings it up. More so lately, I've had heads of growth marketing included on conversations, and I can defend myself. I'm dangerous enough to defend myself, but I can't go into that conversation without my digital lead or someone or my acquisition manager on the call. It's just not smart. So I can defend myself. I think every sponsorship person should be able to defend themselves in the space, but it also brings someone along that's an subject matter expert in that space, so that those two people can speak the language, and they can kind of get the ship going in the right direction, so that that can be part of a bigger partnership package that you're looking at.
Yeah, and I mean, with how much is being spent in digital, you almost can't not understand that, right? To where you can't speak some game of when somebody walks into the meeting and says, "Hey, look, we run Facebook ads and we can retarget people." And if you don't know that, a Facebook pixel can retarget you, and the reason why you're getting skincare stuff is, I just learned this recently. You can go off the Wi-Fi. So if somebody is searching for something on your Wi-Fi, it sends that as well to anyone on that Wi-Fi, which is insane. Kind of going off that for trackability. What's again, the biggest thing that I see with digital ads is you can track a view to a purchase to a retarget all in one shot. For you all on the trackability side, are you seeing partners kind of really wanting to, putting a little bit more premium on, hey, if we're going to run this campaign, I need to see, that trackability from not just awareness, but all the way down to how many purchases or clicks or engagements that we got?
Yeah, I think marketers are getting more sophisticated and they want to see an ROI, and that's something that becomes part of the conversation. We also have to keep in mind that there's a value in the association too. So it's a balancing act between those two things: the association and the actual trackability of what's happening. But it is definitely something they're asking for. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Tony. I appreciate it. I'll let you get back over to your cafecito and get that in. I mean, anything, if fans want to kind of check out what you're doing in sponsorship or just the Miami Heat in general, what's the best way to kind of do that?
I would say just follow us on Instagram, Twitter, even LinkedIn. We're doing some fun stuff on LinkedIn. We have I would put our content team up against anybody in the leagues with the stuff that we're cranking out. So definitely just follow us on those channels.
Yeah, and I'm a huge D Wade fan, and diehard, born and bred from the East Bay Warriors fan from before they were good. But the only NBA jersey I almost bought was a D Wade Miami Vice Heat jersey. So I'll give you some quick props on that to you and your team. But thanks so much, Tony, for jumping on. Really appreciate it. Good luck to your team tonight against the Sixers.
Thanks, Nick. Take care.